Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you and welcome to Islam and Life with me, Tariq Ramadan, broadcasting from London. In today's show we ask the question, how successful is the integration of Muslim immigrants into British society?
Britain is home to many different communities, with Muslims being the third largest community in the country. According to a report published by the Institute for Public Policy Research, there are about 1.1 Muslim immigrants in the UK. This means that around 46% of Britain's 2.4 million Muslim population were not born in this country. British Prime Minister David Cameron claimed that the UK was facing a growing problem of cultural separatism, where the next generation of British Muslims was further away from mainstream society than the previous generation. However, a report funded by billionaire George Soros and published in the Sunday Times showed that Muslims in Britain are the most patriotic and best integrated in Europe. The report also found that strength of religious belief made no difference to how patriotic Muslims feel. To assess what it truly means for Muslims to integrate into the British society and whether this phenomenon is going in the right direction, this episode of Islam and Life asks, how successful is the integration of Muslim immigrants into British society?
The Muslim presence in Britain is a very long presence. It's not 10 years, it's generations. We are talking about the second, third, and even onward generations of British Muslims. Now, we still have new immigrants coming into the country. So when we come to figures and try to understand through the statistics what is happening, half of the Muslim presence and the Muslim population in Britain is still, immigrants, still not citizens living in the country. So what are the differences between the immigrants and the citizens? Are we talking about British Muslim citizens that are already integrated and the new immigrants still to be integrated? Are there tensions? What is the future? When we listen to political voices and even the Prime Minister, what we hear is quite worrying about the fact that it seems that the new generations are less integrated than the previous generations. And the statistics are showing quite the opposite, that things are going better. So it's quite important to get a right understanding of what is happening on the ground and what will be the future. And these are questions that are critical not only for the Muslim communities in Britain, but also for the British society as a whole. So to answer all these questions, I'm joined by Abdul Hamid Qureshi, the President of the European Muslim Council. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let me come to this question. If you have to come to the state of affairs, what is the situation of the Muslim communities, the Muslim presence, the Muslim citizens, or the Muslim immigrants in Britain? What would would be your assessment of this situation today?
I remember the time when we used to have a discussion on the terminology always used, whether is it that the forces who try to mobilize the communities, they're talking about assimilation or integration or interaction. And it still is a debate, and I think that everyone has moved on, that assimilation is not something which anybody wants, but what it is, that how a society together can grow constructively. Every member of the society is engaged in different aspects of their development in a constructive and positive way. Considering that what kind of relationship different communities having within themselves and with the other parts of the society. I am engaged with this process for the last 30 years. I came in this country in 1979, and I can see, gone through the university here and engaged continuously with the community development. And I can say, I remember when I started to work with Lancashire Council of Mosque, for example, and people used to sit together in order to address the issues that we should sit together. If there will be a difficulty, we will be able to address the issues, and that relationship is therefore necessary. But then the question was raised, is it that we are sitting because there will be a problem in future, therefore we have to sit together in order to resolve it? So the question was very seriously asked. And then what was the result of that? That no, we don't have to sit back to wait for the problem. But what we have to do is actively engage that at the first place there should be no problem arising. We should be a normal society. We should have normal relationships. We should have care about one another. And the result of that was that in those days, it was 94, before that, in my university days when I was involved with Federation of Islamic Student Societies, we had Islamic Society of Britain, or Young Muslims, I was part of it very strongly. These were the issues which had multi-dimensions.
But before coming to this, because this is something which is quite important, is the way you were perceiving your society. You came in this country, you were a student here, and you were seeing the future and trying to cope with the future by being involved in the society. Now, what we have coming from the society, while you accept the concept of, integration or not, for example,
yes.
For me it's a problematic concept, but still, if you accept the concept of integration, you have political voices saying, look, you may have talked about it 30 years ago. Now, what we see is Muslims much more segregated, not being involved within the society, living on the margin of the society and creating communities and not really part of the society. And more worrying is that the perception is that what is happening with the youngest generation is even more worrying than what happened with your generation, for example. What would be your answer to this? Is it right or is it wrong?
I think that it's the way this statement has been made is very difficult for me to perceive as a person who has been involved strategically as well as at grassroots levels.
Yeah.
I feel this statement is problematic. The reason is this, that I have seen people growing, I've seen people moving forward, I have seen people whose perception looking at society negatively is changing and looking at it positively. I know many of the scholars with whom I personally have sat, and they very openly accepts that what we have as a justice system, as an education, as a health in general is quite close to our values, quite decent to adopt, quite good to be part of it. And second, that what is it? There was a time that what we can take out of society, how the society can help us. Now I see the voices. What is it what we have to give back to society?
Therefore, when you say we
mean Muslims. I mean young people.
Yeah.
And the people who are the movers and shakers within the society. That where is it that what kind of generation we manage to grow? Yes, there are difficulties, but these difficulties are not necessarily
But would you say, for example, that the situation today has improved? It's much better today than it was 30 years ago?
I think that we have to see the timeline and the spectrum of that, and the very good way you have introduced the program, that there are those people who are now settled here. There are those people whose second or third generation is this. This is their country. This is the place where they belong to. Their attitude towards the society, and those who are coming new, there is a spectrum. And I think that that is reasonable to assume and reasonable to say that there are two-pronged things here. One is that what happens with any community who migrate from one place to another.
Yes.
And second is that how much influence the faith has on us, in a sense of what are the challenges which society poses to us, which are confrontational with our faith, and what are the challenges which it poses us, which are in coherence with it. Therefore, looking at that, I think that I am very positive on that a lot of understanding has been developed. People come today more openly, sitting with you, talking to you, knowing more about your faith.
So you are more optimistic about what is happening today?
I think this is reality.
But when it comes to some of the statistics that are sometimes, there are questions. And myself, when I was facing these statistics, I was questioning the reality of, for example, if you look at the Hindu communities as compared to the Muslim communities with the same standards, the same class and the same social status, for example. When it comes to knowing the language of the country, you see that the Hindu are getting a better knowledge of the language than the Pakistani or the Bangladeshi Muslims, and mainly the Muslim community, than people coming from other faiths and other spiritualities. So it means here, and some are saying this, how the British National Party and the populists are saying, look, the problem is with Islam, because with the same status and the same class and the same social situation, they get less knowledge, less involved within the society. What would be your answer to this?
I think that we have to see the kind of community immigrated at the first instance. I am from village and I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I thank God for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there were many of those people who have come initially to work in the factories and so on and so forth. So the economy, economic well-being was one of the primary objectives. That is true. And many of them used to think that we are going to go back. And many of them at that time invested whatever they used to save pennies out of the pounds they made to invest into the countries where they come from. The fact of the matter is, after all that, today when their children were growing, many of them has worked very hard to make their children grow very constructively. I can tell you, I am from Burnley, for example, and you look at Burnley, you will find where I lived in one of the most deprived wards in the country, but where you will find difficulties in education, you will also find the youngest consultant in medical profession from the same ward. So you will see that spectrum, and I think that people have to see. I remember there was an argument even about our ladies that they are not getting education. Today there are more Muslim girls educated than maybe Muslim men. So therefore I think that those people who say there is a difficulty of understanding the society, yes, maybe in some areas, like if we consider integration, that we are sitting in clubs together, we are drinking together, we don't worry about families, the social interaction, in that manner, I don't think many of the non-Muslim even accept that. And many of the people I have sat with, they consider Muslim and Islam as a positive influence in the society from that angle.
Yes, there is something very important in what you are saying, is that yes, that there are problems, and the statistics are showing some of the problems when it comes to getting the language. But what you are saying, which is also very important, is that there are lots of positive dimensions, and one of them is really women and girls within the society getting knowledge, much more integrated, doing even sometimes better than men in schools and all this. So there is another story that should be said and told to the people. Now, my question here is that, okay, let us speak about, the British Muslim citizens. They are now thinking about contributing to the society. And still, what we are talking about now, it's that half of this Muslim community, there are still people who came, not yet citizens and immigrants, and there are lots to come. And they will come. What will be the role of the British Muslims towards the new immigrants? Because the new immigrants are coming with sometimes traditionalist views on Islam, an understanding which is not connected to the British society, and they can recreate the problems that we solved in the past. How do you see this problem?
I think we have to see that many of those people who are coming now, if you look at the statistics, year 2000 survey or census when it was done in early 90s and then in 2000, you will find that the survey was telling us there is a large population is now indigenous. They are born here. But what we see now, because the comparison, the very question you raised at the first instance as well, the comparison of our respectable friends Hindus and the Muslims, you see, Muslims have a difficulty in a sense of the onslaught which we have to bear. Hindu community doesn't have to bear.
Like what? What do you mean by that?
Like when we look at global situation, all the confrontations is within the areas which generally considered as Muslim majority areas. And all the forces are sent in those areas. Therefore, when the confrontation is like that, the Muslims are looked at with the eyes of skepticism. And we had this interaction, even I had this interaction at the highest ministerial level, that you are now a doubtful community, a community where one could think that you maybe are enemies within. And they forget that many of the new immigrants who are coming are from the areas where the forces have gone, and they are suffering in those areas. So
you mean you were wars?
Iraq,
yes,
Afghanistan. You see many of the people from Kurdistan and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So Somalia now, there's a large contingent which has come from for the last 20 maybe years of conflict in.
So there are
historical
circumstances that we have to take into account.
We have to take into account, and that has difficulty. We, for example, I'm from Pakistan, and from the South Asian communities, I can see and I can say that there is a lot of issues are becoming indigenous in a sense, that if the young people are facing difficulties, they are same difficulties in broad sense, which is the young, maybe the English gentleman will be facing. So, but the people who are coming new, their difficulties are difficult. And usually I used to say, for example, the Pakistani communities were a little older than maybe our Bangladeshi friends, and I used to tell them that you are about 15 years behind us. What the difficulties we faced 15 years ago, you are facing now. That is a general trend in that sense. Looking at that, I think that what Prime Minister forgets in this whole phenomenon, that we for last 10 years have been looked at very actively and aggressively as the people who have a problem politically and who have a problem within that sense.
If I listen to you, just to make it clear, what you are saying is that lots of suspicion when it comes to Muslims today, and especially over the last 10 years, but even before that. Second, the people who are coming now are coming from areas where there are political problems, wars, and unsettled areas where the immigrants are coming with lots of, a very heavy background when it comes to their socio-political situation. So, and these two things have an impact onto the situation of the Muslims in this society. So that could be fine. Now we are dealing with a society where there is a great deal of suspicion. What should be the role of the British Muslims and the citizens, well, half of them are citizens today, towards these new immigrants and towards this image which is full of suspicion today?
I think that I have been arguing this point for some time, that there are two strategies which Muslims need to look at. One is that a defensive strategy, there is an onslaught, and you always saying, no, I am not like that, I am like that. Islam is not standing up to justice, but it is a peaceful faith. The issue is that what is it what a Muslim can offer as a Muslim, regardless of that, what is around it. And I think that we are moving towards that direction. Many of the things are happening, and that is that it is a family life. Muslim can contribute a great deal. It is the education in which Muslim attain the education when we go towards halal life, and we become more contributive to the society in a sense of economy, in a sense of business vibrance, and in a sense of that Muslim does that not to seek any favors in return, but he does it because the Creator asks him to do and engage with his creation in a more constructive way. And I think that is where we are heading into, and we had difficulties of understandings. But I think we have new cohort of people, some of the imams, some of the community leaders, some of the people who are taking charge in the mosques now, which are much more constructive and much more positive, and that is in all schools of thoughts within the Muslim community.
Would you say, for example, that all what you are talking about now, about contributing, is already there?
I think we are on the road now. We are on the road. Some of the things are already happening. Some of the things are in the pipeline. And as we grow forward, I remember, and it gives me tremendous amount of pleasure, that the young people who we were engaged in 80s, mid-80s, and towards the early part of 90s, today what they are giving to the society, in one of the most constructive way. They are doctors, they are engineers, they are barristers, male and female, and they are giving and contributing, and they have become a source of cohesiveness within the Muslim community, who do not toe any sectarian lines or a school of thought, but who overall look at society and overall responsibilities. On the other hand, because they know the indigenous population, because they have interacted with that, because they are seeing the responsibilities which our faith bestow upon us in order to give it. Therefore, I I see them very actively engaged, very constructively doing those things.
Listening to you, it would appear that the Prime Minister, when he speaks the way he speaks, when he speaks today, he doesn't know his country.
I think that what he is towing, I think it's a political side of it. There is a lot of white indigenous population who are facing lot of deprivation. Nobody has looked after them. Therefore, and when there is no family nucleus which can support one another, and I've towed that line for a long time and engaged with them, I respect them, I care about them, and I raise this opinion that this is one of the difficulties which society will face, that how to look after not the immigrants but also the very deprived indigenous population. And because government has neglected it and they have real societal difficulties, disintegration in the family life, which is posing them these challenges, and the easy way to say is that because there is a resentment in that community, and it usually is an easy road, because my job is taken, therefore I am unemployed, because somebody else is in business and I am not in there, therefore that is the difficulty of that community. And
so it's political business.
Political business, and for politicians it's easy. Now politicians have to look that they care about them. So therefore they can't solve the difficulties, but better to have the rhetoric which can buy some votes or which can give some rationale to these things. Whereas Muslims have always said that, all over mosques, not a single mosque is taking a single penny from the government.
So give me in a few seconds, because we don't have time, what should be, according to you, what should be the Muslim response to this political discourse? Quite quickly.
I think Muslim response is that we don't have to be defensive on any of these matters. What it is that we have to stand our ground on just basis and get ourselves equipped and have the abilities which will enhance our engagement, and we serve the whole society in a positive and constructive manner.
Thank you so much for that. I think that this discussion is quite important, because what we hear coming from political voices is that the situation of the Muslims is not getting better but worse, and that the Muslims are self-segregating themselves, what you are saying. And some of the statistics, in fact, are showing that the Muslims are doing much better, girls much better sometimes than boys, and they are not only integrated but giving to the society, and the future is better than what is said. And what you are stressing is really that sometimes for political reasons, because we don't know how to deal with poverty in this country, with people who are deprived, Islam and Muslims are perceived and used as the response to other political issues that are not tackled by politicians today. And the last point is to avoid being on the defensive when it comes to this situation, and to contribute to the society, and at the same time to be able to deal with all these problems that are affecting the British society beyond the Muslim presence today. Well, that's all we have time for. Please let us know your thoughts and views on any of the shows you have seen, and here is the way to contact us.
We'd like to hear your views on today's show, as well as ideas for future programmes. You can do this by emailing us at islamandlife@presstv.co.uk. You can also join our Facebook page by searching Islam and Life on Press TV, where you can view past programmes, keep up to date on future shows, leave comments and meet other Islam and Life fans.
Finally, I would like to thank my guest, Abdul Hamid Qureshi. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope to see you next week, inshallah.